Serials stand alone and strange new Stardates. Yeah. Well, I'm being summoned back into action. Tuesday calls. Today on Trekland Tuesdays Live with me, Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, coming at you right here. Out of Trekland right through Portal 47 for clarity, sanity, and the big picture in all things Star Trek. We got into a thread, actually, I think in our European Portal 47 Ask Dr. Trek Roundtable last. And something occurred to me. As we're sitting here waiting for new Star Trek to pop up on screens, maybe as late starting as August, with Lower Decks. Whether Prodigy is ahead of that or not, I don't know. We'll see soon. Trying to read the tea leaves from Nickelodeon's standpoint. But I think I had an awareness. Now, look, I've been lucky enough and privileged enough to work with the Star Charters over the year and to be given the keys. Where are we? Back there. To stellar cartography. And one of the things as we were updating planets just at the time, just for the first season of Discovery, was one of the feels for better or for worse about, you can say it's Kurtzman Trek, or you can say it's the era of storytelling. I'd like to compare this with other franchises, is we're all into how serialized storytelling is changing the frame that we see Star Trek in, and whether that's a good thing or a natural thing, and whether you're a veteran Star Trek viewer or you're just into it and all you know is the world post Lost, post Game of Thrones, or post Walking Dead, post whatever, and all you know is binge watching 8 or 10 or 13 episodes a season, and these things don't bother you, or maybe that's you remember from the before times, and you remember this. But there are a couple of features, and I just realized there's a barometer here that we can see not only how things are, but how things might be evolving, how the pendulum might swing. I first noticed it working on updating for stellar cartography and looking at planets, and not just making the list of all the planets that I have to update for, but looking at trying to guesstimate if they're not fiction, if they're not non-fictional, guessing where they are, story-wise, to make a plot point. And even things like warp drive and distance. And I'm sorry if I'm getting in the weeds already or for making your eyes cross, but I promise I'll keep it simple, on a simple basis. But my main theory is this. A lot of the logistics of the Star Trek universe that Gene Roddenberry and company created and refined to make sense of this fictional world, to make feel more real so that people would believe these crazy things are happening in a 60s mindset when sci-fi did not rule the roost of entertainment. And it maybe hit a peak in the 80s and 90s with Berman Trek. That things begin to go a little askew from that with the Kelvin movies, true, but we're talking just about movies. So you're only out there for 2 hours and you got to wait for 4 years. So it wasn't quite as obvious then, although the Kelvin movies are full of placing and basic star dating. But it's dawned on us a thing that's, at least for now, different about the serialized format. Because in the old days, well, I'll just say this. I don't think Stardates fit the serialized storytelling. Now, I know I'm at risk here of doing exactly what I tell other people not to do, which is lump all of the secret hideout Kurtzman era Star Trek into one big lump, because they're not. They're differentiating. It's hard to tell that now we're so close to them. But as we get further away, and as the buffet expands, it's easier to tell the tastes. I mean, Lower Decks has already shocked and surprised a lot of people to the good. Yeah, but my point is, it's dawned on me that world shifting of storytelling and structure and what expects, just the whole paradigm of these Star Treks are seen on a streaming service. It doesn't even care how exactly long the shows are. Nobody is cutting these to fit a commercial format and an overall hour length, or 43 minutes with 6 minutes of commercials and 2 minutes of titles in and out. And the network ID, 15 seconds for that. I mean, you can find the formula that any era from NBC 1966 onward had to fit. And storytellers were hamstrung to that. Although it didn't used to be hamstringing, it was just the way it was. Well, that's off the window, obviously. We've got episodes ranging all over the place in time now. That's just one aspect of the freedom that's there. For the storytellers, they're the modern treks. Even in the 80s and 90s, the syndicated format, the network format, I wanted to call UPN a network. Tiny little thing, wasn't it? All of those strictures, all of those limitations in storytelling were there. Also, primarily, though, the fact that you had to crank out 26-ish, less in a strike year, 26 episodes a season. And that, of course, is blown up. And those were 26 standalones, unless you had, strictly standalones. You had two-parters. You had cliffhangers and comebacks, season premieres. And we've talked about this. This is what overlaps the whole discussion of standalones versus serialized. And in case you didn't know, the reason we had standalones in the past was networks did not want to discourage anyone from, if you turned on to a show and you suddenly got the feeling that you had to know a lot of backstory to make time here, the idea was that you would just turn the dial, that you would just go on to something else, right? Because portable media, ownable media, much less binge watching, was not a thing. Everything was fleeting. It was all in capturing your eyeball at that moment. Okay, a one rerun? Okay, maybe. It was only with the broadest of strokes, because no one was paying attention. Well, no one could record anything. Who was recording? People in Hollywood that had film libraries of their own stuff. TV shows cranked it out. Even experimental videotape shows, talk to the BBC folks, or anybody trying to track soap operas and game shows in the States. Videotape was just recorded over, and nobody thought about the permanence of this. So all of those, much less paid people for it. One run and one rerun, maybe two reruns if you were lucky on your residuals. Bang, that's it. All the Star Trek gods of the 70s weren't getting paid for it when syndication became a thing. How lucky you were on the cutting edge and no one knew to pay you for it before the cutting edge cut. All this is to say that I miss not just on the geek side, having planets, having Stardates. I am not geeking out on this. I'm only saying because the feeling of Stardates and the feeling of place and time, that you got from 26 episodes a season, standalone shows, that was a feeling of place and time. And it was a necessity because you had to have some, for sanity of the storytellers and the producers, much less the fan and the audience, some semblance of order and progression. And I guess what's dawned on me here lately is, yeah, we knew this intellectually, but in a very real way, the idea of where we are and how long we're here, whether it's just how long it takes us to get from this place to the other. And I don't mean on the anal stellar cartography, let's figure out the warp factor. I mean, that's fun, that helps. But I mean, just in a generic sense, if you watch any of the streaming shows, very rarely does anyone say, well, where are we going next? Well, we're going to Fred's planet. It'll take us 6 hours. You're lucky if you get a warp factor or if you're not on the mushroom drive. And I'm not saying any of this to be critical. I'm just saying it because it's a fact of where we are. So if you're kind of oozing your fact giving about place and time, then Stardates are totally irrelevant. They're more like historical markers. Once or twice a season, we get a treaty, we get a personal log. If you notice, Burnham talks a lot. Michael talks a lot, but it's never as a personal log, at least not since the first season. They made an attempt to keep us Stardates in the first season. You can go. I mean, Memory Alpha's got everything logged for you. And I'm not decrying or not decrying. Again, I'm just saying it's a passing thing. What's really interesting is, as much as I talk about Discovery and Picard having a different vibe, a different feel, a different motive, and I know some of you may not agree with this, but I did hear either Alex or Heather Caden talk about how they viewed Star Trek Discovery as science fiction action and Picard as science fiction drama. Take that for what it's worth, but as much as the feels are a little bit different there, and Picard you would think would be a little more traditional and hidebound, you didn't get Stardates really in Picard much. We got years, we got all kinds of canon timing as far as like the years and slotting things into the post Next Generation. Everything with the Mars attack and the Romulan supernova and the Romulan rescue and the gap of time of Picard's self-imposed return. All of that was masterfully worked out time-wise, and trying to keep different uniforms going for all of that. But I came across a quote, one of Michael Chabon's, and you've heard me praise him before. Michael Chabon, where have you been all my life? And I hope to have a really good sit down with him coming up. But I found a quote of his that I had overlooked, where he said, Stardates, in my view, and I know this is going to make some people mad, are a uniquely perverse form of uninformative information. Using a stardate tells you precisely nothing. Even people that know how to interpret and convert them, they have to go off and interpret and convert them and then come back to give them any meaning. Giving an audience a stardate is like if I wanted to know whether to put a sweater or not, and you told me the temperature outside in Kelvin. Oh, it's 287 outside. Which I get that. I was surprised here because Michael Chabon is such a world builder. If you haven't read his recent articles on Medium, he is such a world builder. That end of the background, that end of use the universe is amazing. And again, I'm not talking today about geeking out just for geeking out's sake. It just made me realize I was laughing about how stardates are all over the map at all the modern Star Treks. I don't know what's worse, when they try to use a stardate or when they ignore them. And yes, there is the stardate system that Kelvin's tried to promote, where the first 4 digits are just the Christian Gregorian calendar Earth-based 4 digits, and then you have a digital after that. I mean, in the old days, in the Berman era, when we started it was a totally convoluted manufactured system, right? Stardate, what were we? 4-1 something, because 4 was going to stand for the 24th century, because they were updating from the 4 digits, and that was one of the things. Look, they had 4 digits in the original series. Now we have 5. 78 years have passed, apparently, which was fun until you actually, as 5 years, 6 years, 7 years in, and as Mike Akuda used to write the memo every year out. Basically, what happened is if you advanced a year, and your year changed, where the first digit in the 4 was 24th century, the second digit was the season of the show, when you only had one show. So 4-1 was 24th century, first season of Next Generation. And then the last 3 digits progressed from 0 to 999 in a season. And I've laughed about this before. So not only are you dividing 1,000 by 26, and that's your unit range, unless you really stretch it for some storytelling reason. Like if a story is actually going to take 6 months, then you'll take 6 months worth of stardates and thing. But not only did so now you're converting, there are 999 stardate unit or 1,000 to a year, which is very infinitely, the centigrade, the metric system, people love this. So now we got metric years. But if you're on a 24-hour system, that means you have 3 units to a day. I mean, it was very regimented. It was easy to do and understand. It just didn't make a whole lot of sense in a logic way. I mean, you could calibrate for it. It was easy. What it dawned on me after a few years was all the big crises. You've heard me say this, I think, maybe. All the big crises in local space in the 2360s and in the 2370s. All happened over if you were from Earth and you still celebrated Western holidays, like, I don't know, Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's Day on the old calendar, all the big crises happened right over the holidays. No one ever got a holiday break if they still marked those holidays, right? Wolf 359, the Borg invasion, happens over the holidays, right? Interfering in the Romulans interfering in the Klingon Civil War happens over the holidays. Lors Borg's incursion happens over the holidays. It's insane there for a while how things were all happening. And I know Voyager was stuck out in the Delta Quadrant. Same thing on DS9, though. things got worse. Not quite as pointedly, though. But anyway, anybody still trying to celebrate aboard Voyager, and there were some. It looked like Christmas morning there at one point. Everything just ruined your holiday break. So that was one of the oddities of bringing a real system into real life. So it's fun. They were regimented. That was great. It's just that everything blew up. Not even the Kelvins. There's only 6 hours. There's such oddball occurrences. I'll just jump right into the TV era. Okay, you're going to change the system. Late in TNG, Mike found that you trace the 4100s. It's 41 years, and that's when 5-digit Stardate started. Sometime you got into this with Loxana and Kester's biographies and all kinds of things. You find the limits of these. They're not perfect. Get that. People may keep trying to evolve them. I didn't mean to get into an analysis of Stardates. You can do that very much on the Memory Alpha article, even more than we used to do. But the fact that the vibe isn't there tells me something about in serialized streaming storytelling. It's all about the arc. It's about having chapters of a novel, not so much standalone stories. And when you're all caught up in that, I can see where maybe Michael says they don't. I disagree with him. They do tell you something. They tell you about the progression of time. And if you start a pattern, then you do that. What's hard about standalones is rather than looking at slots in a season, you get 3 Stardate. You get this Stardate range for this episode 23. Your Stardate range in the season is here. And when you show shows out of order of the way you air them, if you're smart enough up front, you know that. But occasionally things do get slipped around at the last minute, and you're back in original series days when the star dates and the aired order are totally out of whack and make no sense in an aired way. And you find yourself saying, are we going to go by aired order, production order? What was reality? Was reality production aired order, or was it Stardate order, which is way out of whack? And then you filter the animateds into that, and you're all over the place. Much less the wacko Kelvin. Well, the Kelvins in the Kelvin universe don't have to worry about it for the most part. But you've got the discoveries trying to cram in ahead of It's a headache, and I'm not advocating that. What I'm talking about is the big picture here of Picard could have done those easily. Michael, I see his religious political view here about Stardates. They could have been there, but I just think what it says in a bigger way about time and space and serial storytelling is that those kinds of things get in the way. What struck me at first as oozing, it's like everything is about the set piece and the crisis and the resolution and hopefully a character moment. But the step beyond that made things feel real, when you have no limits of a 24-hour, of a 1 hour, when you don't have the limits of a 26 slot season and a 1 hour format to save your story in, to run your whole plot in an hour's time, the ticking clock, the good old ticking clock that nothing made more literal than 24, the series. But the old storytellers, the TV and film writers' craft of the ticking clock, because that's how much time you have, a finite amount of time, it goes out the window in streaming. Both in the moment, because you don't have to be an hour, and then because this story is going to go on and on and on. And maybe you do have a really tightly wound narrative that way, and it is dependent. Or maybe you don't. So, I can see where Michael would say it's not really giving you any information. Maybe it's a moot point. I still think it does give information. It just makes the audience pay attention over 10 or 13 episodes, not 43 minutes. And if you're going to demand something from the audience, that's fine for those keeping track at home. I think if it turns into an act of the writers, if all the things they're juggling and balancing and trying to get in, and hey, I will give Michael from here to the cows come home. If he's going to invent planetary facts in the world building that we never see on screen, but they were back there in his backstory and he chooses to share them, that's awesome. I'm much more all about that than I am about trying to get the place in time. And part of that was pinning things down to our real star charting and our real Star Trek layout that has evolved, and getting advice on that. And Picard did adhere to that. Most of Picard happens in the former Romulan neutral zone area, somewhere along the lower arc. And those of you who are Star Charters know what I mean. And yes, I will look at the chat as always when we get done at the end, after the midway break here. So hang in with me. But I just had this realization when I'm sitting there being disappointed that I don't have a star date to write for every episode, when I would be a little disappointed that there were so many variables trying to figure out the relative distances and where things were, because it's not just for the geekery, it's what's at stake. It's the stakes and obstacles for the characters and the plot. If we were telling a story across America or around the globe, or even from here to Mars, we would know what those things meant, or those in the audience who were on that level and got it, or maybe 10 years later were watching the story and got it for the first time. That's all in there because we know it's all been factored and mapped, and we know what time is here. We know what miles per hour means for whatever we're in and wherever we are. We're in the fictional world of Star Trek's 23rd, 24th, or even 32nd centuries. And we don't know, and we need that help. Even if it's nothing precise, if it's just a vague notion. And that's all Gene did in the beginning. He was so vague on star dates. The next gen and on era, as they evolved, was seen as a fix to the vagueness. But the vagueness was there for a reason. They didn't know what century they were in, much less how time would work and how directly related they were back to Earth and how far away they were. If they're really on the frontier, it's going to take time a ways to get back and forth to Earth. And are we going to be tied to Earth? No, we're not. We'll never see Earth, practically. And that way we're out here dealing with our frontier admirals and commodores and captains. It's a funny thing. It's a funny thing. I'm just looking at, I guess, the pendulum swing from 80s, 90s Berman era Trek, and even the movies following on, because they related to that time frame, and the modern world of storytelling, even from two different perspectives of where that falls. And of course, the great exception to all of this is, oh my God, Lower Decks, where we did, not every episode, but where we did get personal logs and captain's logs and announcements and treaties and such. Right? I mean, where is it? There's Burnham in People of Earth on Discovery in 32nd century actually gives a 6-digit star date. Like they've raced forward to keep that going. Whereas earlier they had gone with the year and the fractions of a year. I mean, it's just all over the place. And again, I didn't mean to get into a masterclass about stardate variations. You can read that. I just think the use of stardates is reflective, maybe not even about people's personal opinions in writing, but just what the medium is demanding right now, or at least one way of approaching it. New ways are being seen. Lower Decks feels so next generation-y because they do talk about changing course, going from planet to planet here. And a lot of the Vigera are fine. We don't exactly know where some of the new planets they're visiting are. And that's cool. And it's cool to see them using star dates that aren't too far out of the realm that we last saw in Insurrection and Nemesis. That's cool. Where all this brings me down to, of course, is Kiva Goldsman making all the talk, even Anson Mount, about the tone of Strange New Worlds. And that's, where I got the title. When we talk about standalone episodes with some running arcs, standalone episodes, much less the fact that it's adventure of the week, in other words, will we see it? And we're back in the 10 years before Kirk era here, or less. Are we going to see a return to the captain's log tool, the captain's log device, and personal logs and star dates, and trying to fit that in? And are we going to use the year? Those are all questions. The detail is there. But overall, will that be the vibe? Will not so much the geeky factor, but will the storytelling nature lend itself to reminding us what a ticking clock is within each hour of a standalone show, and not that this is just one chapter in a 13-chapter novel, that by the time you get to chapter 9, you're going to forget where things were in chapter 1 on that level, and it's not going to be important. Anyway, have I lost you? Are we in the weeds on this totally? I just thought that realizing why we didn't have Stardates, it's personal. There's always a way to make everything work. But now that we've had more than one example of a serialized Star Trek with more to come, I see divergent points. I do not lump them together. I see divergent points all over the place in tone, in the structures, in the choices made on different things. And yeah, Discovery's had so many different parents. How do you watch the kid grow up when they've been in and out of so many foster homes? Hopefully with a good home now. But I don't know. It was just a whole new way of looking at current Trek versus older. And, you know, looking at the other end of the telescope, I have not talked to enough recent fan converts to Discovery's era. You know, Discovery was my first. Look it up. It's a Facebook group I started. Discovery was my first. If that window on Star Trek even has a clue or a care about the fact that we used to have star dates every time as markers of progression through a season, through an episode. I don't know. I just wanted to, and again, wondering what the gang are going to do in the room with Strange New Worlds. Much less, I don't know. Somehow I kind of see Prodigy as not needing to be. On one hand, it can totally be there. Is the holographic training hologram Janeway going to deliver things in Stardates for her young charges, unaware? Who knows? We'll see. I can see it not being a key part of Prodigy, much less, especially the fact the show's aimed at 10, 12-year-olds. Or maybe a Stardate progression of some kind, a chronology of some kind, will be a tool that young viewers can hang on to. I don't know if it'll be important or not. So it's a buffet. It sure is. We will see what's coming down the pike and see if that attitude changes and if that indeed does match a shift to standalone stories, the adventure of the week. Akiva keeps talking about what an original series fan he is. They've got some real, if you saw the, not First Contact Day, but if you saw the panel day from the Star Trek Day panels from last fall, that Strange New Worlds group is really a bunch of old-time Trek fans and all teared up talking about writing. So we'll see what their room comes up with. We will see what the nature of Stardates does. I didn't mean to geek out here. It's been such a diversity now. It's going to be amazing. Maybe 10 years from now, we can retcon all this the way we finally retcon star layouts and star charts with and without help from the show. So anyway, that's just a thought I had. I could not believe I had a bombshell. I had a light bulb go off last week about the relationship between Stardates and streaming structure. Serialized structure, I should say. I don't know. Did I ring a bell there? Or did I put you all to sleep? We will see. Meanwhile, though, I do want to say, hey, number one, a shout out to all of our Patreon folk here. Okay, thank you guys for having us in. I'll get back to you in a second. But also this month, it's the third Tuesday of the month, and on the third Tuesdays of Trekland, we give a 24-hour. I've got a 24-hour flash deal for you this month. Very simple. No money involved. No silver, gold, or gold press platinum will change hands here. All I'm asking, a very simple request. I'm offering PMA. What's a PMA, you ask? Well, as opposed to an AMA, a PMA is a phone me anything. Here's what I mean. For the next 24 hours, I'm just asking, if you haven't already, go over to my YouTube channel and subscribe. Okay? Subscribe and then leave a note down below this. You can do it right here. Leave a note down below that you just subscribed. And I know what the ticker is. I'll watch it go up. And you know what? I'll take your word for it. I will. The number of names better match the number of upticks at the top or the deals off. If you post in 24 hours, everybody who goes over and subscribes, I'll do a random drawing. I'll pick 2. And we'll set up a call. We'll just yak. If you ever wanted to yak, well, if you ever wanted to yak with your Trek friends about anything Trek, if you ever wanted to yak out something Trek, here's your chance. We will make it up. We'll do a Zoom call. We'll do a half-hour Zoom call. Anything you want to talk about Trek-wise. You want to ping me? You just want to pontificate at me and talk for 30 minutes and not let me get a word in edgewise? I can do that. How's that for simple and quick? Because it's been kind of a time, guys and gals, peeps. I'm still in a very introspective time coming by here. Now, that's not to say that we're not still cranking it out. We're still cranking it out. And again, I want to thank all of our TTLers and our live wires on Patreon. If you're not familiar with Patreon, so thank you. Thank you. I'll just say Blaze K, Robin Wilson, yes, Lawrence Todd, and Marie Siegel, Blake Arledge, Justin Porteous, and Nathaniel Robinson. Thank you guys for being TTLers. And our live wires, look at that. Rusty Harold, Halbjorn Gud Johnson, Jalen Bullock, Gary Williamson, Jared Cooper, Mr. Vestek, Robert McLean, and Casey Shafsky. Hey, we're getting close to the end of the month. Patreon is the way that people can support any kind of creative in all kinds of fields at patreon.com. Mine is Trek/Trekland Live. You can find me. You can find lots of folks. I have a very simple Patreon because we do so much other elsewhere. $5 and $10 a month. Patreon takes it. You sign up. They bill you. It's automatic. It's silent. You get on, you get off whenever you want to, but every month you're with me, you get a shout out. Thank you so much for your help and helping us grow the media stream of Trekland. $10 a month, you get that. And yes, I'm behind. I need to share some more of our early behind the scenes interviews with folks from the earlier years of Portal 47 and give access to that. So thank you guys once again for all of that. Meanwhile, over on around the rest of Trekland on the Trek Files, we were back with Gene Laura from the first generation of fan to professional writers, the first generation of fandom that built not just zine, fan fiction and zine writing, but the foundations of Trek fandom and then media fandom and Comic-Con culture. Yeah. And yes, Gene did have a couple of professional novels too. Anyway, we're back with her commenting on a document we found from early third season from Gene. Go check out the Trek Files if you hadn't. It's on Facebook and wherever you get a podcast, podcast.roddenberry.com is where you can find the places. But Facebook is where we give you the paper, so to speak. So join us there every week. It's up on Tuesdays. And hey, Saturday, we just had a watch along on Life Support Live. It's all up. You can check it out where you're watching me now. That's where we have Life Support Live, going boldly through uncertain times. Dr. Trek and Dr. Ali Matu, one of us is a real doctor. We do Trek through and I know it sounds imposing, don't let it scare you away. Trek through a mental health lens. How about a help for daily living in the crazy world we live in? We have a lot of fun, guys. We have a great community. We just celebrated our first anniversary. We were pandemic born and pandemic bred, and when we die, we'll be, no. Check us out. We just, got up to episode 53. And of course, we're here. We're here every week. Hope you're with us. Before I go here, before the break, YouTube watchers, I'm going to break here, but watch us live. You'll see the whole show. Okay. If you're archivingly YouTubing, if you're live YouTubing, hang on, we'll get there. But a real quick shout out, friends of Michael Braveheart, who was Ensign Nurse Braveheart, most of Next Generation and half of the movies. He's got a $3,000 medical GoFundMe. He's over halfway there. I'm giving him a shout out, helping let the Trek world know that he's asking very humbly for a little bit of medical help. I hope to get him out and get him at some cons sometime if we can get that. He's New York based. So yeah, so do that. That's a GoFundMe, friends of Michael Braveheart. And meanwhile, if you're with me right now on YouTube, that's my Twitter, just at Larry Nemecek. On Facebook, that's my Instagram, Larry Nemecek's Trekland. And again, if you like where I'm coming from with some of this, we were a little bit analytical, a little bit weedsy on geekery today. That's what we do all year long, every month, and a whole package of features that I call Portal 47, portal47.net. Check that out if you want to jump in with us. We would love to have you. Guys, that's going to do it for me. That was a little more obtuse a topic. I don't know, but maybe it'll get us thinking again about the differences that we have seen so far. Nothing is set in concrete. The differences we seem to have seen so far in trying to write this thing we know as Star Trek in a serialized manner to fit the world, and then how we maybe step back from it with the room, what the writer's room is going to do with Strange New Worlds. And just one aspect of that, another little barometer, little marker, was this whole attitude about Stardates, and if they're in the way, if they're crazy, if it's just too much canon anchor around my neck to keep up with, or if there is a place for it, and we just need a little distance for, the next Rick Sternbach and Mike Okuda to figure out how to handle these evolving formats and how to resolve all the canon Stardates we've seen so far into an even bigger frame, an even bigger picture that we've dealt with. That's it for me, guys, today. Until then, please, everybody, stay healthy, okay? Just do the things. Just do the things. Don't blow this up as we're coming around the far turn, okay? Let's get there. Hashtag wear a damn mask, okay? We're having all kinds of trouble spots around the world, and some aren't as far along as most of the world is not as far along on their vaccination rates as the US is. And even here, we're seeing spikes from people getting sloppy, from the arrogant lunkheads out there that are trying their best to drag this out, even as they scream about it taking too long. I don't understand. Don't you know this is a pandemic? So stay healthy, guys. And please stay woke. I mean that in the broadest sense, as in pay attention to what you're reading, check the sources, check the underlying, if there's any real there, and who might be motivating you to think a certain way. Who's paying for it? And is it even real? Is it even a real person? Check the source. Oh, and yeah. Trek well, everybody.